Hey class, this is Mr. Schmidt for Environmental Science, November 3rd. What we're looking at is the plant's role in cycles and food chains. Okay, just before we get too far into it, I do want to remind you this is the end of the first quarter and you need to turn in all late work or any grade defense type material you need to do. Okay, remember any homework that's coming in late or labs need to be accompanied by this document. You should email me both the assignment and the grade defense together as soon as possible to get those grades in for the first quarter. Okay, exam grade defense is a little different. It's going to require us to take more exams in the future before you can raise those grades, and it's documented how to do that here. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the plant's roles in the ecosystem. Okay, before I get too far into the plant's roles though, what I want to talk about is the lab report that just came in, because I still feel like people are writing their procedures with the wrong audience in mind. Okay, why do we write the lab report and the procedure? Okay, these three pieces put together are so someone else can replicate your lab and get the exact same results that you got. And if they can't, then there's something we need to talk about in terms of, did you document everything and what can be accounted for? Okay, so this is not just discussing what you did, but it is instructions for someone else to do it. Okay, which means, especially in the materials, listing exactly what kind of seeds you used and how much water you added is very important information. Okay, and so we want to go through this process being clear and accurate throughout all of this. Okay. The next part in this is doing your graphs. So I brought this up before, but I'm still seeing the same mistake. Okay, so I pulled this from one of the students. They used a bar graph instead of a line graph. And what happens is we get a 3-day gap and then a 4-day gap and 3 days and then 4 days and then 5 days and then 3 days. But that 5-day span looks like just as much as the 3-day span. Okay, so this is not an accurate use of your X coordinates. Okay, so you need to think about what kind of graph would best represent that. And like I said, a line graph or a scatter chart is a much better way to do this. Okay, because we do not have an answer to this. Every time you change the bars, you change how many days were between each of the bars, which makes it misleading. So we were looking at plants' role in the carbon cycle and students being able to describe the process and importance of photosynthesis, and students being able to write a balanced chemical equation for photosynthesis. Okay, so obviously photosynthesis kind of going to be the word of the day. Okay, so as we look at this, all right, what we see is that photosynthesis is the process by which the producers, okay, like plants, convert light energy from the sun into chemical energy in the form of glucose, which is a sugar that becomes our food. Okay, the importance of this is it converts light into stored energy using that photosynthesis process and using inorganic materials. Okay, so photosynthesis, when we say reactants, that's the things we start with. Okay, so the reactants start with carbon dioxide, CO2, 6 of them, and water, 6 H2Os. So we take that carbon dioxide in the water, or the plants do, because humans aren't capable of doing this, and they hit it with sunlight, and the plant can then produce glucose, so this is the formula for glucose, and 6 oxygens, okay? Which is convenient for us because we like to eat things high in glucose and we like to breathe oxygen. So the plants produce 2 vital pieces to our survival. So as we look at this, remember we have gases coming in the form of carbon dioxide. We have liquids coming in the form of water. So we have material coming in and out of the plant. So that makes us an open system. Okay, so this open system, whether we're looking at the leaf or an individual cell or the chloroplast, is an open system. And in that open system, that's where all these things are coming in and going out. Okay, so other necessary things we need to know. So inside the plant, we have the chlorophyll, which is a specific pigment, okay, or color found in the chloroplast, right? And it absorbs all light, all colors, except green. So when we look at it, we see the green reflected back, and we see all the other colors being absorbed. Okay, the sunlight is the source for all this energy. So autotrophs, right, automatically eating, need light energy to transform reactants into products. And they do that in the presence of enzymes or specific chemicals that are needed to catalyze or speed up the reaction. So you have some catalysts and enzymes in your body as well, like in your liver. You get all these toxins or unnecessary things in your bloodstream, and your liver and the enzymes inside your liver break down those pieces into smaller digestible parts or parts that could be pushed out of your body in the form of going to the bathroom. But first, your liver has to pull them all out, and it uses enzymes to do this process. Okay, but we're not talking about things that have livers today. We're not talking about animals. We're talking about plants that do this photosynthesis. Okay, so we said we had reactants, things we start with, the carbon dioxide and the water, they come together. It's the sunlight that provides the energy, the chlorophyll that provides the opportunity, and the enzymes that speed it all up. So if we have the energy, the place, and the speed, then out comes the glucose and the oxygen gas. So plants don't want oxygen gas. They push that into the environment, but then they try to store their glucose somewhere in the plant or in the leaves or in the fruit. All these sugars start getting stored. Okay, so to put that into words, chlorophyll and other pigments located in the chloroplast absorb the sun's energy, which stimulates carbon dioxide and water to react and form glucose and oxygen. So this is just the sentence way of writing this. So you notice scientists tend to be lazy. They don't want to write out a big long sentence, so they try to summarize it and abbreviate it into this chemical reaction. Okay, so once we have that chemical equation or this sentence, then we can see that energy is stored in the bonds of the glucose. So places where one carbon was stuck to another carbon, that is where all the energy is sitting right now. It's no longer sunlight, it's now chemical energy. And then organisms must break these bonds to get the energy. So if the plant later wants that energy from the glucose, let's say it put it into the fruit, and now it wants that fruit seed to get the energy, okay, it's going to go through cellular respiration to get that. If we find the fruit and we eat the fruit, which has the glucose or the different sugars now in it, then our body is going to harvest that energy from those chemical bonds as well, okay? And all we do, humans, is cellular respiration. We don't have any photosynthesis. Plants do both photosynthesis and respiration, okay? So this was chosen for this week's topic because it ties directly into what you're seeing. So this was chosen specifically for this week's topic because it ties in directly with what you're seeing outside your window, which is that the deciduous trees, like oaks and maples and birch, they are all changing colors, okay? Not to be confused with the evergreen trees, okay? Those, like the pines, are going to keep their colors because they have different structures to keep a hold of their chemicals. But the deciduous trees are going to start changing colors, okay? And they change colors because as the weather gets cold, the plant stops supporting the chlorophyll and the green pigment breaks down because the chlorophyll is no longer there. And when the green disappears, we just have these other chemicals left, and those chemicals are reflecting different colors. And if it gets a little bit colder, then that chemical breaks down and the yellow goes away, and we're left with the carotene and the red leaves. So if we have cool, dry days, the chlorophyll will break down, but the others will remain. And then the colder it gets, or if it gets too wet, then this will get bleached out as well, and we'll be left with brown leaves. Okay, so why the colors? The chlorophyll breaks down quicker because it has less water than other pigments. Okay, and different trees have different amounts of each pigment, creating different colors. So this is true not just of different species of trees, but also of their locations. Okay, if they have more access to water, or they're in different elevations, which give them different temperatures, they're all going to produce different shades of color. Okay, so the varieties of colors is caused by the different amounts of water in the types of trees. Okay, so that was all going into great detail about the grass and the trees. Okay, these are our autotrophs, our primary producers that automatically eat energy. Okay, eating is not quite the right word, but that's what they're doing. They're consuming energy from the sun. Okay, so we have to have lots of plants for all this to happen. And then once it does it, it feeds into all the animals that eat plants, which feed into all the animals that eat smaller animals, okay, which will then feed into the alpha predators that eat all the biggest animals, okay? And then remember, there's always going to be that bottom cycle as things die or as they go to the bathroom. They're going to leave behind matter and energy, and those will be decomposed to push nutrients back into the soil, where our autotrophs and our primary producers can then combine those nutrients with energy from the sun and start all over again. Okay, so as we look at this, we can compare. This was the cheetah food web and from Africa. We can compare that to the oceans much closer to Washington, but extending all the way out to the South Pole. Okay, they are all going to start with algae. Okay, so algae is just the word for all of these water plants. Okay, it can be little bits of green stuff in Lake Vancouver, or big swarms of it in rivers. Okay, it can be super tiny plants and single-celled plants living, and it can only be seen under a microscope, or it can extend all the way out to kelp beds, which can be hundreds of feet tall, okay, but still completely underwater. Okay, so if you're looking for like sea otters, they're going to be living in kelp forests. Okay, but that is still a form of algae, and so it is still going to fall under the algae category and is going to be our primary producer at the base of our food web here. Okay, so they're asking for at least 4 chains. They say there's 8. I feel like there's a lot more than 8 chains here. One chain could just be algae, squid, killer whale. Okay, that's a complete chain. 1, 2, 3. Okay, we've gotten from the primary producer to the apex predator. Okay, or we could go algae, small animals, krill, cod, where's cod go? Leopard seal, killer whale. Okay, so that would be a completely different chain. So you have to put together 4 different chains for this. I've seen a lot of people turn this in already, so it looks pretty good. Okay, then we can look down at these. Okay, the important thing for these 4 questions is to really understand what is different between the three questions, okay? So we have counting organisms, so like the number of plants versus the number of predators. We can look at the weight of plants and the weight of predators, or the number of calories held in the plants and the number of calories stored in the apex predators. Okay, so when we're looking at biomass, that's going to be weight. Looking at productivity, it's going to be calories, and individual organisms, that's going to be counting. Okay, so it should go A, and then C, and then B. Okay, and like I said, if we're looking at energy, okay, which pyramid is the most accurate indicator of amount of energy available? Well, energy available is measured in calories. So it is going to be this, the third pyramid, because calories measures energy. Okay, so that should take us all the way through this process here. We've talked about the plant's roles as the base of the food chain, and we've given an assignment and worked on the assignment for the food chains, and we're getting ready to go forward and look at ecosystems and how all the cycles fit together. Okay, so with that, hope you all have a good evening, and I will see you later.